Okay, I was on Facebook. Bad idea, right? Well, there's a topic that popped up that hits real close to home. There's some people trying to get the word retard made illegal. Now, who is it that gets called that word the most? That would be people with Down syndrome, people with autism, and people with cerebral palsy. I do not have Down syndrome or cerebral palsy, but as we all know, that word is real popular on every playground. Now, they tried to change it so it was less offensive to developmentally disabled. Well, you see how that's working out. Police are killing disabled people in record numbers and calling them mentally ill to get away with it. It's only a couple of keywords off, right? So, the picture that they chose for this particular advertisement was of somebody with Down syndrome, which, yeah, we all understand why. Anybody who doesn't understand why doesn't know how that word was used. Before that, people with Down syndrome were called mongoloids. We had to stop using the term mongoloid because it's offensive. When I say we, I don't mean me in specific because by the time I was born, that word had already been phased out. They had replaced the word mongoloid with the word retarded because people thought, hey, the word retarded means slowed down. There's nothing offensive about that. Now, here we are 50 something years later. Kids are still running around calling each other retards on the playground. Now, we got a lot of hate words, a lot of them. A lot of those hate words I'm not willing to use. I have lots of friends who are homosexuals. So that F word that people like to use to be derogatory towards homosexuals, I don't use that word. Then there's the N word. Well, I don't like that word either, so I don't use it. I have seen on multiple occasions where people have taken advantage of that. I've seen black people start fights with white people and then say, he called me the N word, he called me the N word to get away with it. I've actually had people try using that on me. He called me the N word, like hell I did. Now, there are names that are just plain mean, and you're going to get called them either way. Here in Chapel, Nebraska, I have people call me N word lover, like I'm supposed to be offended because I love people. Or is it the N word part that they feel I should be offended by? Now, these folks, their argument here is that if, let me see, I want to make sure that I quote it right. So it was on my phone. Hopefully, I didn't lose it. Let's see. This person wrote, someone personally not being offended by the word doesn't mean that others aren't or shouldn't be. If a word or term is hurtful to even just a portion of a demographic, it's worth removing that word from your vocabulary. I'm sorry that I'm not enunciating my words quite perfectly. I don't have any teeth. Anyway, it says it's an incredibly small ask, and the result is tens of thousands of people feeling more wanted and included in this world. I just want to state for the record that that's horse shit. We have people who are offended by the word we. We have people who are offended by the word she or he or sir or ma'am. If we got rid of all of the words that were offensive to some person in our demographic, even a small portion, we would not have a language at all. At least not a spoken or written language. Then it would be body language. And then there's going to be some pretty girl who is offended that some dude who is not attractive looked in her direction. So maybe we should remove the eyeballs of people who are too ugly to look at, or people who are so ugly that you don't want them looking at you. I mean, are you seeing where censorship is really headed? Where it's leaning towards? Now, don't get me wrong. Yes, I have defended homosexuals most of my life. However, that doesn't mean that I have to agree with every single thing ever stated by every single homosexual. Because just like any other two people, no two homosexuals are going to be alike. When you find something that's offensive, well, let me give you an example. In Boulder, Colorado, there are a lot more homosexuals than pretty much anywhere else I've ever lived. And many of those homosexuals have very specific names or titles that they're willing to answer to. Some of them want to be called homosexual, and some of them find the term homosexual to be hateful. They find it offensive and don't think that it should be anybody's business if they are or not. But some of the titles that these homosexuals wanted to come up with for themselves are not titles that most of you guys would even recognize as a title. Some of them had enormous egos. We all know people like that, people with a massive ego. They want you to say Esquire at the end of their name because they own property. They feel they're entitled to it. Now, I got to tell you, once you've got 100 homosexuals that you are interacting with, and each one of these peoples wants to have an individual title that they're going to be called, and no two of them are alike. So you might have one person who's a homosexual who is entirely offended by he and she. There might be another homosexual who prefers to be called a she or prefers to be called a he. You might find another one who's offended by the gender thing at all, that you're even bringing it up. But that's not the reason that I brought this video up. That's not the reason that I brought this forward. The reason I brought this forward is because there's a lot of people on here who are autistic. Now I'm going through here and trying to find one in specific that I was looking at. Well, we'll go to this one. Her name is Michelle. Michelle typed, I was constantly called the R word in grade school because I'm autistic. It was an awful feeling. It is a slur against disabled people, and it's disgusting. Let's see. Someone else wanted to write, I was called all kinds of names in grade school, and I hate labels. I still have so much anger from grade school, but when I look at my former teachers and peers, I pity them now. This person, Annette, also replied to Michelle. Annette typed, Michelle, you aren't autistic. You are a person on the ASD. It doesn't define you. When I was attending Duquesne University for a dual BSED in elementary and special education, it was always student first, different abilities last. I'm sorry you were bullied. It wouldn't have happened in my classroom. Hayden typed something that I actually agree with quite a bit, but not entirely. Hayden typed, Annette, please don't presume to tell someone how to identify. I am autistic. I am not a person with autism. Person centered language is not always preferred, and it is really crummy to think you know more and better than the person in question. This is something I've been saying since the start. People keep telling me how I am and what autism is, people who have no clue. Autism is being victimized because you're different. Anyway, Hayden continued, here is an article that discusses some reasons autistic people prefer identity first language. Now, this part that I don't agree with is to tell someone how to identify. Well, you can presume to tell somebody how to identify. You guys presume a lot of things, or assume is probably a better word in this situation. You make a lot of assumptions. Whether you're gay or straight or black or white, you're going to make assumptions. Now, are you passing judgment based on your assumptions, or are you trying to find out the truth? See, when I was growing up, it was popular for people to pretend that all Mexicans are going to come steal your stuff, and anybody with brown skin is a Mexican. Now, obviously, that's not true. Obviously, I could have chosen to just assume that everybody with brown skin is Mexican and every Mexican is a thief. I could choose to believe that. Instead, I observed. I paid attention to what was going on around me. Not all brown people are Mexican. We got lots of Spanish speaking people in the United States who are not from Mexico. So even speaking Spanish does not make you a Mexican. Anyway, the response that I had for Annette, she's the one who was the teacher and wants to make assumptions. I typed, I am autistic. It defines how others treat me and what they are allowed to get away with. Pretty words don't change the fact or that fact. Calling a dog turd a donut won't make it taste any less like crap. Calling a rose a skunk won't make it smell bad. Changing a word doesn't change the facts. If I bleed to death, does it really matter if people pretend the blood was green? I've bled to death no matter what color the blood is. Why do we have so many neurotypicals who talk down to us like we are too stupid to comprehend the English language? Now, this person, Hayden, who is autistic, who is speaking out to a special ed teacher or someone who went to school to be a special ed teacher. But this person who is the special ed teacher wants to start off typing, you aren't autistic. Okay. What am I, a turtle steak? Am I a Big Mac? A hamburger? By any other name would still be a hamburger. It's not just the See, Annette, after typing that ignorant crap up the top, wanted to type at the bottom, "I'm sorry you were bullied. It wouldn't have happened in my classroom." No, it absolutely would have happened in your classroom, Annette. It absolutely would have. Your very first sentence shows that. You typed, "You aren't autistic." You have already started an argument with an autistic person with that very first ignorant goddamn sentence. I don't say it the way that you want me to say it. Huh. Let me tell you something. Those homosexuals down in Boulder, I tried my best to remember everybody's identifiers. That's what we call them, identifiers. I personally identify as a lesbian. I'm not a cross dresser. I'm not into men. I'm not actually into women. But does it matter how I identify? If I told every homosexual out there that wanted their own special title or didn't want to be called by a gender specific name or a gender specific title, if I told them all, you're not really gay, you're not really a homosexual, you are a man, you do have a penis. That wouldn't fly so well, would it? Of course it wouldn't. But this lady who is supposed to be a teacher who got a dual BS ed in elementary and special education, this person has gone to school to not be the idiot that they're being on the fucking internet. Starting off with, "You're not autistic." That was a lot of people's excuse for doing the harm that they did to me. "You're not autistic. You're not autistic. My cousin's autistic. You're not like my cousin." Or there's a lady that I was in jail with. She was wanting to tell me how she doesn't need to learn anything about autism. She already knows everything there is to know about autism because she's got a friend who has two autistic kids. There is a big difference between knowing and assuming, and this lady was assuming. Now, the part there at the very beginning that Hayden typed, where Hayden typed, "Annette, please don't presume to tell anyone how to identify." After the argument that I just presented, you'd think that I agree with that, but I don't. I don't. Now, obviously, Hayden has done the right thing by asking, please, please don't presume to tell someone how to identify. Please. And even using the word please, I don't agree with it. Why is that? Because almost everyone that I know pulls this crap, telling you how to identify, how to think, and how to feel. But then when they're in that situation, they don't feel that way. I'm sure that Annette would not feel the same about autism if Annette was autistic. But Annette is not autistic. So Annette needs an education. Those presumptions are from a lack of education, which is sad for somebody who went to school specifically for special education. People are going to presume whatever the hell they want. A lot of people say, Sean, you need to not care what other people think. With all due respect, people are raped over what other people think. People are murdered over what other people think. Wars are fought over what other people think. You shouldn't care what other people think. No, you absolutely should. What other people think could get you killed. It could get your kids killed. It could get your parents killed. It could get your husband or your wife killed. I tried being the best example I could be. For years and years and years, I was the best man I knew. It didn't make a goddamn bit of difference. I wasn't heard. I was treated like a retard. Meanwhile, I'm more intelligent than most of you. The thing is, most people don't make the connection that just because you are intelligent does not mean that you have resources. I know some people who are dumb as a fucking stump. Dumb as a fucking stump, doing great in life, but they had an excellent start. They had family that helped them, family who cared. When the difference was between $100 for rent or ending up homeless, these people were able to get $100 rent. Most of them were able to borrow from their families religiously, consistently. For me, yeah, I didn't get that. What I got was the homeless part. And then there's the connections that people just don't seem to make. They don't make that connection because they're not in the situation. Instead of asking people not to identify, try to put them in your shoes. Maybe if you can explain it to them in a way that they can connect with, it'll make a difference. But most people don't. When it comes to autism, we have to deal with our own families assuming we're retarded. Yes, the word retarded is absolutely offensive. So is the term mongoloid. So is the term mentally ill. Back before the Civil War, a black man wasn't going to get an honest day in court. They just call him the N word. Let's say the judge hasn't seen the defendant yet, and somebody says, oh, well, the defendant's the N word. Well, back then, if you were called the N word, you didn't have any rights. You were not considered a human, according to the United States of America. And that's exactly how it is today if you're called mentally ill or if you're homeless. The anti homeless laws that victimize myself and many others like me, those laws were started after the Civil War was over because of the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment was supposed to free the slaves. But if you've been convicted of a crime, you can still become a slave. So the South made homelessness illegal. And 4 million homeless black people all had to wait their number for the chain gang. But it wasn't just black people, it was anyone they considered a vagabond or a scamp or a tramp. Anybody who was homeless. And you don't even have to commit a crime. Being homeless itself is a crime. Every aspect of homeless life is illegal. If you got to go to the bathroom and you don't have access to the bathroom, you're breaking the law if you go to the bathroom. Then there's how the laws are treated differently depending on who you are. If you were a college student and you were drinking at the bar and there's a bathroom in the bar you could have used, but instead you go outside and you pee on the side of the wall. A police officer catches you, sees your Colorado University ID, and gives you a $100 urinating in public ticket. No big deal. But if you're a homeless person, they don't want you in the bar. They're not going to let you in the bar. If you have to pee, you have to pee. If all of the public restrooms are locked up, you still have to pee. But you're not going to get a $100 ticket like someone going to see you gets. No, you get public indecency. You get indecent exposure because you're homeless and not a college student who gets all of the advantages that homeless people don't get. Well, lo and behold, America shows that you're not a human being to them. If you're a homeless person, you are worth less to American society than Black people or Mexicans or Native Americans. There are more hate crimes against the homeless than all other hate crimes combined, times 5. And that's not even including police interaction. Meanwhile, nationwide, 81% of those incarcerated were homeless when they were arrested.